science.
Suffice it that the blood of 1,000 men and women was spilled within these walls. Limbs twisted and broken, eyes gouged from bloody sockets, flesh burned black.
Please. You're awake the dead. In death, there are no accidents, no coincidences, no mishaps, and no escapes. What you have to realize is that we're all just a mouse that a cat has by the tail.
The number you have reached, 911, has been changed to a non-published number.
Hello, and we're back on World of the Unexplained. Welcome back, guys. It is Monday night, as usual. It is November the... what is the day?
6th, maybe?
Is it the 6th? I don't know. It is. It is November the 6th.
That was a good guess.
It was a good guess. Very good. Chuck's feeling a little under the weather tonight because he went out to a Guns N' Roses concert.
Thought I just lost my voice, but apparently it was much more than that.
Well, tonight we've got Stanton Friedman with us. Stan received his BS and MS degrees in physics from the University of Chicago in 1955 and 1956, and he was employed as a nuclear physicist for companies such as GE, GM, Westinghouse, TRW Systems, Aerojet General Nucleonics, and McDonnell Douglas on such advanced, classified, and eventually canceled projects such as nuclear aircraft, fission, and fusion rockets, and nuclear power plants for space. There goes my cell phone. Gosh, that's great, isn't it? He's a speaker now for more than 600 colleges and over 100 professional groups in 50 states, 9 provinces, and 16 other areas. There's just really too much. He's done too much for me to read it all, man.
No, you're right, man. Definitely.
We're just gonna call him the UFO guy for tonight because he's probably the most preeminent expert on this. A very big proponent of the UFO stuff.
Yeah.
So let's bring him on. Stanton Friedman here on World of the Unexplained. Stan, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. We had our first snowfall here in beautiful Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, east of Maine, where I live.
Awesome.
Everybody's welcome up this way. I'd suggest the summertime.
Wow. Chuck, go for it. You're more the UFO guy than I am, so I'm looking to Chuck for guidance here, unless I can get it from you, Stan.
I don't even know where to begin, man.
There's so much work here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just named, I don't know what, about a dozen different military contractors.
I know that he did.
Yeah,
well, he did author the crash at Corona, the definitive study of the Roswell Incident. Can you tell us about that, Stan?
Well, yeah, that Don Berliner is my co-author. He's an aviation and science writer, and I'm the original civilian investigator of the Roswell Incident starting in the 70s. And finally, after a lot of attention came the way of the Roswell Incident, Bill Moore and I did 95% of the research on the first book, The Roswell Incident, in 1980. The writer was Charles Berlitz. And then we wrote a number of papers, and I instigated the Unsolved Mysteries program on Roswell, which had an audience of 28 million people.
That's right. That thing was huge. I totally remember watching that as a kid.
Well, you know, that was before the cable stations were so important. So 28 million was a pretty good audience. When it reran in January of 1990, it was 30 million, their highest ranking ever for Unsolved Mysteries, which just proves there's a great deal of interest in the subject. And you know, the nice thing about being at home is nobody knows you're watching, you see. To stand up in public, that's a different story. Well, I mention that because one of my goals over the years, and I've been lecturing for 39 years now, is to help lift the laughter curtain, the fear of ridicule that keeps people from reporting their sightings, keeps professors from sponsoring PhD theses. There have only been about a dozen. There have been some courses taught by courageous people. But to give you an example of that, at the end of most of my lectures, I ask how many people here believe they have seen what I would describe as a flying saucer. Now, my lecture is flying saucers are real, and I've defined my terms earlier on. And it's fascinating to watch from the stage because I start counting when the hands slowly start going up. They know I'm not going to laugh because I've just lambasted the nasty, noisy negativists, as I call them. But they're not sure about the rest of the audience. And I point and count, 1, 2, 3, pointing, as I go, so they know that I've counted them. And by the time I get to the other side of the room, from wherever I started, people's hands go up much more briskly because they suddenly realize they're not the only one. Typically, 10% of the people in the audience believe they've had a sighting. But then I ask, how many of you reported what you saw?
Nobody.
90% of the hands go down. If there's anybody left, I'll ask, and they seem to be appropriately aged and so forth, how many of you were in the military at the time? If there's still a hand or two up there, I'll ask, do you want to tell us about it? And that's when I get some great responses.
Wow.
One guy in front of 1,350 people at East Texas State University a number of years ago said, I can't, they told me not to say anything, which was a wonderful line. I had another guy say, they took my pictures. And everybody's waiting, where's the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. He doesn't say anything. So I say, look, I'm not asking your name. You don't need to stand up. But I'm sure the audience would like to hear the rest of the story. Everybody claps. So he remained seated. And he tells us that he was piloting a 4-engine Air Force plane out over the Pacific. Another plane 20 miles ahead radioed back that there was a saucer heading their way. They took gun camera pictures. They radio the base to which they were flying to let them know about the pictures, because the pilots don't handle the film. That's done by specialists. And they land, the film gets taken, and they get debriefed and told never to say anything. Now, there's no way, I could have arranged for this little recital. And I get stories like that all the time. Now, I never use them in my lecture, but it's amazing how many such stories I've had over the years. Perhaps not too surprising with over 700 lectures, but still. The point is that when I ask people afterward, they may want me to autograph a book or something, and I say, why didn't you report it? They think I was some kind of a nut, is the most common response I get. And so you have the crazy situation. I was in a class of students at a college a number of years ago, and about 100 students, and I told them I wanted to find your opinion on things, but I want you to vote unhindered by the views of your classmates. So please close your eyes, and you'll vote with your hands, and your instructor and I will count the responses. 80% of that group thought most people didn't believe in UFOs.
80%?
80% of that group did believe in UFOs. So
Wow.
It appears that people respond, they behave on the basis of their perception of how other people will respond. And for example, I've only had 11 hecklers in more than 700 lectures, and I come on very, very strong. I start every lecture with a flat-out statement of 4 conclusions after now it's 48 years of study and investigation. 1, the evidence is overwhelming that planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. In other words, some, underlined 37 times, some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Most are not. I don't care about them. Most isotopes aren't fissionable either, and when I'm building a reactor, I don't care about them either. The second conclusion is that we're dealing, the subject of flying saucers represents a kind of cosmic Watergate, meaning some few people within major governments have known since at least July 1947, when 2 crashed flying saucers and several alien bodies were recovered in New Mexico, that indeed some UFOs are alien spacecraft. The third conclusion is none of the arguments made against the first 2, including by my University of Chicago classmate for 3 years, Carl Sagan, stand up under careful scrutiny. Their arguments sound great, of course, until you look at the evidence, and then they collapse of their own weight because they don't have any weight. And
Carl
finally,
Sagan was your classmate. Wow.
For 3 years, yeah. He never bragged about my being his.
Well, Chuck was my classmate in college, and I don't brag about him.
Well, the nice thing is, of course, that I'm here and Carl isn't, so I can brag about his being my classmate.
Woo.
I'm actually 4 months older than he was, and we grew up in adjacent towns in New Jersey, although we didn't know each other then.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah, it's interesting juxtaposition, so to speak. And I was at his home a few years ago when I was speaking at Cornell, and he couldn't understand why, because he knew my background, why we came down on opposite sides of the UFO issue. And part of the reason, and this gets to a problem for a lot of scientists, almost none of whom have studied the relevant data, as Carl certainly hadn't, is the notion, and Carl said it to me, look, the essence of science is reproducibility.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not true. That's not the only aspect of science, and it certainly isn't the one that's most appropriate for ufology.
Mm-hmm.
I pointed out to him in a letter after I got home that there are 4 kinds of science. First is the controllable, reproducible, lab experiment. You set up everything, you describe it all, you publish it, and somebody else hopefully will repeat the experiments and get the same results. We need those kinds of experiments, no question about it. But the second kind, equally scientific, is when you cannot control but can predict. Eclipses come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it would be inappropriate if I tell you, look, sometimes the moon comes between the sun and the earth and it gets dark down here, and you say, come on, I don't believe that. 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'll bring a camera. You show me. Well, I can't. That's not the nature of the beast. So you can hope to make measurements, presuming the weather is all right and all the rest of that. There's a third kind of science. That's where you can't predict and you can't control, but you're ready to make observations. Think earthquakes. You've got your seismometer set up. It's not doing anything most of the time, but when an earthquake hits, if you got a bunch of them, you get some really useful data. When Carl and I were at the University of Chicago, we had a block of nuclear emulsion hooked to a big balloon, and if our detectors of X-rays and gamma rays said there was a big solar storm going on, somebody would run out to Stagg Field and release the balloon so we could get measurements of the particles that were released by that storm, because they take a lot longer to get to the Earth than the gamma rays and X-rays do. So you can't predict, you can't control, but you can make observations. The fourth kind, however, is what's most appropriate for our discussion tonight. These are the situations where you can't predict and you can't control, but you can still use the methods of science. These are the situations that involve intelligence, sort of in quotes. I'm thinking about airplane crashes, automobile crashes, rapes, robberies, and UFO sightings.
Strange family, but yeah, I see where you're going.
Think about it for a minute. I can guarantee you that in the next 12 months, 30,000 Americans will die in automobile accidents.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you who, where, or when, and I certainly can't have surveillance on every street in the country, so that we can see it happen. What I can do, however, using the methods of science, is to measure the skid marks, to check the alcohol level of the driver, to look at the brakes, to check witness testimony, hopefully with several witnesses, who went through the stop sign and who didn't, and things like that. And, people aren't terribly precise about some things. If you're talking a bank robbery, for example, if you say, well, he was about 6 foot tall, the robber, plus or minus 20%, that isn't much good because it doesn't allow you to distinguish between all the possible robbers. But if you say an object was round, now maybe it was a little oval, and it hovered, well, maybe it was moving back and forth a little bit, and made right-angle turns, so maybe it was 80 degrees or 110 instead of 90, and it went straight up, well, maybe it was at an angle, and it was going 1,500 miles an hour and then stopped dead. Now, you don't need to be very precise in all those things to describe something that's clearly outside the purview of what we Earthlings, and I'm presuming you guys are Earthlings, I don't know that's a fact, but...
Well, Chuck I know about, but I'm not sure about Trent.
It's outside the normal purview of the things we can build. And I say that, well, how do you know that? People say. I say, look, the only people with money enough to develop new high-performance vehicles are governments. And what do they do it for? For military purposes. Think U-2, the SR-71, and there's a whole bunch of the stealth planes and so forth. Now, the thing about military systems, when you got a war, you use them.
Right.
And, since 1947, there's been a Korean War, There's been a Vietnam War. There's been a couple of Gulf Wars. There's a little war hither and yon, say Afghanistan and a few other places. And we don't see no UFOs, no flying saucers. We do see unmanned aerial vehicles, but they certainly can't match the performance of flying saucers, as observed especially by pilots and their radar systems and radar on the ground. I really like multiple witness radar visual sightings. You know, these are trained people. When you get on their airplanes, you certainly are trusting them to get you where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get a report, well, there's a report up in the Yukon about 10 years ago there were over 30 people in groups of 2 or 3 that were driving along and saw this monstrous UFO. And one man, a civil engineer, was able to find these people. Almost all of them stopped at the one place on the Yukon highway, the Klondike Highway, where you can stop and have a cup of coffee or whatever. And he talked to more than 30 people and was able to triangulate. You know, the front end was over that mountain, the back end was over this lake and that sort of thing. That darn thing was between 0.6 and 1.2 miles long.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Now, that, you know, it's not one witness per 5 seconds. It's 30 witnesses, independent in groups, about 10 different groups. And so reports like that. And then, of course, we have a Japan Airlines 747 flying a load of wine, and they weren't drinking it, from Iceland to Alaska. And here's this big thing up there as they approach Alaska from over the Arctic. And they reported it to the ground. To make a long story short, and it's a complicated case, but the important thing is they got permission from the ground, which saw it on its radar. They saw it on their radar. The crew saw it out the window. It was estimated to be twice the size of an aircraft carrier. They got permission from the ground to change their course and fly in a circle. And this thing station kept with them, that is, stayed at the same angle to the plane as it moved around, and observed on the ground and on the plane and by the crew. Now, the skeptics explained this, explained in quotes, as Jupiter and Mars. Now, that's the most incredible aircraft radar I've ever seen.
They pick up Jupiter and Mars. That's great.
And, you know, Jupiter and Mars, there they were, flying in a circle as observed by the plane crew.
And what do you think? What do you think these things are, Stan?
Well, I think some UFOs, we got 2 categories, really, and the reason I talk about the big ones is we've got some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. In other words, we got the little ones, what I call Earth excursion modules, you know, like maybe crashed at Roswell. And there's a guy in Missouri, Ted Phillips, who's collected 5,000 physical trace cases from 70 countries. And typically, these are under 30 feet in diameter. They're seen on or near the ground, and after they leave, one finds physical changes, burn circles, burn rings, landing gear mark, an occasional footprint or 2. 1/6 of these involve reports of beings, typically small humanoid beings. And then we have the motherships. And here's the kicker. What do we do when we want to carry a bunch of airplanes to, say, bomb Vietnam? I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that.
Oh, well, I'm 30. I think, Chuck, what are you, 29 still?
Yeah, man.
Just for a little bit.
So you weren't around then. But anyway, the point is that here you have aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered typically, that are huge, you know, over 1,000 feet long, 70,000 tons, that kind of thing, carrying, say 75 small airplanes, which refuel on board the carrier, then go off and bomb and strafe and do the other things military planes do, and then come back, reload, and do it again. They work entirely differently from the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier these days doesn't need to be refueled for 18 years, if you
because of the nuclear reactor.
Good gosh.
Yeah, they're pretty special. But so if you're going between the stars, in other words, you use your big mothership.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
when you get in the vicinity of a high gravitational field and an atmosphere and all the other things that distinguish Earth from the nothingness between the stars, then you release your little Earth excursion modules, and they fly in the atmosphere. I mean,
kind of like scouts.
What?
Kind of like a scouting group, a scouting mission.
Yeah, scout, grad student vehicle, whatever they're doing. I'm giving a paper on Friday, this coming Friday, actually, and the 4th annual UFO Crash Retrieval Conference in Las Vegas.
Okay, now that's near our one of our affiliates, KQCX, in the Phoenix, Arizona area. So if you're going to be if you're listening to this show, then you can see Stanton Friedman speak about this. Where exactly is this going to be, and what are the dates and times?
Well, that's going to be at the Tuscany Suites Hotel Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I speak Friday night. And the title of my paper is The UFO Why Questions, W-H-Y, questions. And incidentally, I'll be, from there, I go down to Arizona, and I'll be speaking in Tucson on Monday, the 13th of November, at Pima College East Campus at 7 p.m. And then on Wednesday and Thursday, I'll be speaking at Cochise College down in Douglas, Arizona, down near the Mexican border. Giving 2 lectures, because one is for students the first night, students and faculty. The second one is for anybody, and their facility isn't that huge, and they're expecting a huge response, of course. And those 3 lectures in Arizona will be Flying Saucers Are Real, illustrated with slides, real pictures of real UFOs and of nuclear rockets and all kinds of data and all that sort of thing. But the why questions are interesting because in my lecture, I start talking about 5 large-scale scientific studies, and after each one, I ask, how many people here have read this? I show a slide of the cover, tell what's in it, and so forth. And if I'm lucky, 1 or 2% have read any of them. So people have no trouble accepting the data I present because they have to admit they've never seen it before, and that tamps down some of the noisy negativists who might be inclined to argue and then realize they'd have to admit, and this has happened a couple of times, that no, they haven't looked at any of the data I talked about.
Oops.
It doesn't make them look too good. But then what I find in the question and answer period, and I have an open question and answer period, no written questions, and I don't know the people, just whoever wants to start it off. I find that what people really are intrigued with are the why questions. Why would aliens come here? And why don't they land on the White House lawn? And why do I think that SETI, S-E.T.I, stands for Silly Effort to Investigate? And, well, haven't you heard that before? Questions like that. And you see, I bring to this subject sort of a peculiar background. One is the working on more canceled government-sponsored advanced research and development programs than anybody, but that means I can deal with the you can't get here from their arguments, or if you could get here, you couldn't stand the accelerations and all the rest of that stuff. Second
I do have an off-topic question for you, though, Stanton. I don't want to break your train of thought, but do you think we went to the moon in 1969?
Yes.
Okay.
And in 1970 and in 1971.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Continue.
I've talked to several astronauts.
Oh.
Okay. Where was I? I was the why questions. Why do they not land on the White House lawn? Oh, my background things. Right. I worked on canceled government-sponsored research and development programs that were classified. They weren't black budget, but they were classified. The data was. So most of the academics in the world don't know anything about those programs. And to give you some idea that these were not little trivia, 2 professor, 4 grad student paper studies, when I was working on nuclear airplanes for Aircraft Nuclear Propulsion Department of the General Electric Company in Evendale, Ohio, just outside Cincinnati, back in the 50s. In 1958, we were spending $100 million a year. That was a lot of money then. We employed 3,500 people, of whom 1,100 were engineers and scientists. I ran experiments. Radiation shielding is my bag, involving more than $1 million worth of pretty fancy materials. And yet most people, and we operated jet engines on nuclear power, I better add that. I worked on nuclear rocket engines for Westinghouse Astronuclear Lab.
Wow.
The biggest one, our biggest one was only 1,100 megawatts. That's half the power output of Grand Coulee Dam. But Los Alamos tested one 4,400 megawatts, twice the power of Grand Coulee Dam, and it was less than 7 feet in diameter, I might add.
Well, Stan, I hate to interrupt you, but we're going to have to take a short break.
Okay.
So about 5 minutes. We'll be right back. You're listening to World of the Unexplained, and we're back here, World of the Unexplained. Trenton will be joining us at some point in time tonight.
Sweet.
So he called and told me he was on his way. The number, if you would like to reach Stanton Friedman tonight, is 1-877-722-7382. That's 877-722-7382. Or for those of you that are numerically impaired, that number is 877-SCARE-U2. And locally, 336-996-1596. We're here with Stanton Friedman. Welcome back, Mr. Friedman.
Glad to be back again. Glad to be alive at my age.
Now, tell me what you think these things are. I mean, why do you think they're coming to this planet? What do you think they have in mind? What's going on out there?
Well, in this paper I'm given at the end of the week, some of the reasons I give for coming here, they're graduate students doing their thesis research on the development of a primitive society. They're broadcasters with a weekly show, Idiocy in the Boondocks. It turns out the Earth is the densest planet in the solar system, meaning a cubic foot of Earth weighs more than a cubic foot of any other planet. And that means there are more heavy metals here. Heavy metals are rare in the universe. We know from studying the light we get from stars. By heavy metals, I'm not talking lead. That's a piker.
I thought you were talking about Metallica and Megadeth. I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding.
No, I'm a classicist myself. But, we're talking about uranium and gold and tungsten and rhenium and osmium and platinum and those kinds of things, which are almost twice as dense as lead, rhenium is. But they have very special properties, and we got lots of them. And you say, well, come on, you wouldn't come this far for that. Well, it's one possibility. Why did all those people go out to California 150 years ago? Why did they go to the Yukon 100 and some years ago? Why did all those people go down to Australia? They were looking for gold, man, gold. Also, there are a lot of other resources here. We're the only planet in the solar system covered with water. And there are nodules right in the bottom of the ocean. We build nuclear submarines to kill people with eventually, not to mine the nodules.
We've got a caller for you, Stanton.
Okay.
Hello, you're on World of the Unexplained.
Hi there, I'm calling from Chicago.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, just peachy. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Friedman.
Okay.
Okay. And Mr. Friedman, first of all, I want to apologize. I'm not a conspiracy nut, but these are some things.
Well, I'm not either. That's okay.
Awesome. But these are some things that I've actually kind of been reading about lately. And the first one, I called my dad and let him know I was going to be calling into the show, and he's all into Roswell. And first of all, he wanted me to ask, were there 4 or 6 bodies? How many lived, and are they among us today?
Well, that's a tricky question. There were 2 crashes that I talk about in Crash and Corona, and my books are available, incidentally. I don't say, you can't read them. You can read them. You can get them from me if you want, autographed and all that stuff. On my website, I better mention it.
Yeah, go for it.
www.stantonfriedman.com. Now, Friedman's F-R-I-E-D-M-A-N. If you don't spell it right, you won't get there.
Okay.
There's also
videos and all that.
There's a link from our site as well. If you go to our site, worldoftheunexplained.com, you can click on the guest link, and you can pull his up and click right on his bio, and it'll take you to his website.
Okay. At Roswell, it appears that there were 2 crashes. One near Corona, actually, about 80 miles northwest of Roswell, tiny little town, in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's a lot of nowhere in New Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
The other one out in the plains of San Augustine, which is west of Socorro, again in the middle of nowhere. And it appears that there were 4 in the first instance and 4 in the second instance as well. Similar reports of what they look like, and 4 fingers, which is kind of unusual. Long, somebody said they'd make good violinists, one of the witnesses. And I don't think any of the ones from Roswell were alive, but at least one of the other ones was. And there have been other crashes, apparently, but a few in each place. And, you know, I don't get, even though I had a security clearance for 14 years, that was for things nuclear and stuff, I certainly don't get any classified documents directly from the government. So, you know, people say, what's the material made out of? I don't know. They don't send me analysis reports, you know. My book, Top Secret MAJIC, goes into the documents and, you know, what I think happened with regard to President Truman setting up a group called Majestic 12. I also show that some of the Majestic 12 documents are frauds. Everything has to be taken on its own. You know, people ask me, do you believe in abductions? Well, I'm convinced from my own investigations and from dealing with the primary investigators that some Earthlings have been abducted by some aliens, but each case has to be examined on its own merits. You know, is this fool's gold or real gold? Well, you got to test it to find out. So Roswell was real, and I even have a paper critiquing the Roswell critics. And in Top Secret MAJIC, the second edition just came out last year, and I added 5,000 words that deal with the attacks on the Majestic 12, MJ-12 documents, but also deal with some of the attacks on Roswell. Because if Roswell wasn't real, then the documents are obviously fraudulent. But I also showed, I've been to 20 archives and have written classified reports myself, so I'm better equipped than most to deal with government documents, especially classified ones. And there's an awful lot of mythology about them. Some people say, oh, all that stuff is automatically declassified after, pick a number, 15, 20, 25 years. That's hogwash.
Right.
Well, the Eisenhower Library still has 300,000 pages of classified material. He went out of office 45 years ago. You know, so for those who think it's all automatically declassified, you're wrong. And you can't get access to a lot of stuff. And some people think you go into the files and you look through it, and when you find something you like that's classified, you hand it to them and you want a copy. Well, you don't get to do that. You tell them what boxes you want. They bring you the boxes, and they may contain folder after folder with what are called withdrawal sheets in them. That tell you about a teeny bit of information. A 2-page memo, John Jones to Paul Smith, June 13th, 1953, top secret. You have no idea what is in it.
The wonderful Freedom of Information Act. Did we get all your questions for you out in Chicago?
Well, there was this weird one that I had for you.
Okay.
Sweet.
This is the one that I'm really apologizing for.
Uh-oh.
No problem.
But, and this is the weird thing I was reading about over the weekend, because I have nothing better to do with
you must
my
have been
time.
on the internet, I suppose.
Yeah, of course.
Too bad.
But I was wondering if you've heard of Dulce, New Mexico.
Yeah, D-U-L-C-E for those who I don't know how to pronounce.
D-U-L-C-E, right, right, because I Googled it and came up with just a ton of mind-boggling stuff. That supposedly the government has a base, like, I guess, 8 floors underground, and they're holding aliens of all different stripes, and they're doing the DNA, and they're mixing it with human DNA. Well, you can tell I'm very skeptical about this.
I am too. I've talked to people who've gone all over the Dulce area, and there may be some underground storage there for nuclear weapons in the past. New Mexico, for people who haven't been there, is a hotbed of classified research and development activities. 2 of the 3 countries' nuclear weapons labs are in New Mexico, Los Alamos and Sandia. At White Sands Missile Range is the largest military base in the country. That's where we were firing captured German V-2 rockets back in 1947. And Holloman Air Force Base right there also has a stealth fighters based there. And, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Right.
And nuclear weapons labs are pretty good size. The last time I checked, both Los Alamos and Sandia had about 8,000 employees, of whom 30% or so were professionals. And the same for Livermore up in the Bay Area. The numbers have probably gone down a little because we haven't used many nuclear weapons recently. But so there's all kinds of stuff going on in New Mexico, and there has been in the past. Manzano base just outside Albuquerque is supposed to store nuclear weapons, laser weapons, all kinds of goodies. So, I'm not saying there aren't classified facilities in New Mexico, because there certainly are. But the Dulce story, it has legs. It keeps being repeated and repeated. But I've yet to see any evidence that that is true. And I have talked to people who've been looking all over the place and talking to people. Now, there are stories of UFO sightings there, as there are all over the world. You can't go anywhere and not, if you seek them, find UFO stories. But as far as I'm concerned, thumbs down on Dulce as a base for alien investigation.
Now, what do you make of all these sightings? This increase, and I don't know if it's an increase in sightings, but it seems to be over the last few years. We've got another caller, hang tight, caller. We'll get to you in a second. It seems there's been an increase in it. Well, I'll get to my thought in a second. I was just going into the Dan Aykroyd on UFOs and some of the other stuff with all the videotape footage. But we'll go ahead and take this call. Where are you from, and what's your name?
Hello, caller.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, caller? Okay, did they hang up?
I think so.
I see how it is. All right. So, okay, I guess I will get to my question then, and that was you can give us a call here. Let me give that number again. It's 877-SCARE-U2. But the question was, with the increase in the UFO activity, or what seems to be an increase in UFO activity, I don't know if this may be due to the advent of the video camera and the price coming down, so almost everyone has one available now, versus 10, 15 years ago. But what do you think about that? Do you think we're experiencing an increase in this kind of activity, or is it just something that we're more apt to see?
Frankly, no. I'm a member of the board of the Mutual UFO Network, the largest respectable UFO group in the country, and we have a publication, monthly MUFON journal, MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, over about 3,000 members or so, and we get sightings listed every month. I get a 20-page clipping service every month of UFO sightings. I haven't seen any particular indication of an increase. What does vary all over the place is publicity. In other words, if the press will treat the subject fairly, other witnesses will come forward. If the press says, silly season is here again, people are seeing these stupid UFOs, other people aren't going to come forward. Who needs it?
Oh, you see the classic example in the media, especially in the comedy media, about it's like, me and Chuck saw it over there in them lights.
It's always
and
some backwoods redneck
it is
depicted there.
Yeah, it really is. You never see an intelligent person get on and say, well, yes, I observed it, here at this, and I've got these pictures, and after, you never see that.
Well, that's right. It depends on the media, and they're getting a little better. Now, you have two confounding factors here. One is the Internet, which has no standards at all.
Thank God.
Well, there's a good side to that, I grant you, but there's a bad side, too. People believe what they read without doing any critical thinking or checking, and so I'm as big a debunker of the noisy positivist as I am of the noisy negativist. People repeat stories that they've heard someplace else, who got it from somebody else who'd heard it, and without doing any checking. That's why I mentioned that I've been to 20 archives.
It actually came from us, Stanton. If they don't know, it came from us. We started the lie here. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it is a problem, and the kicker is that people like to tell stories, and usually there's some truth in all stories, all myths and stuff. Ask any good fiction writer.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there that's true, Part of it is that, and part of it is, indeed, all those, cameras, little cell phone cameras, and all the rest of that. Again, I get people showing me stuff. I watched for 5 minutes a light in the sky at night. They've got a video camera. Isn't that the greatest UFO footage you ever saw? Well, frankly, no. And in my lectures in Arizona, I was shown...
We got another caller, Stanton.
Okay.
Okay. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello, Scott.
Hi.
This is Ralph.
Oh, hi, Ralph. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
This is your first time calling in.
Yeah.
This is, for those of you that don't know, this is Trent's father, our co-host, who is on his way as we speak. What do you got for us, Ralph?
Have you got Dr. Friedman on there tonight?
He is on right now. You can talk to him.
Okay. I got a couple questions I'd like to ask him.
Sure.
It seems like I'm keeping track of the UFO reports and so forth. Watch it. Do you have any idea as to why we have so many? They're running around with so many lights on. When if they didn't have the lights on, we would never notice them.
Well, airplane lights are normally used for collision avoidance.
Well, I would think they wouldn't have too much trouble with that with their capability.
Yeah, but airplanes might. Seeing them, look, it's perfectly obvious to them that we know they're here. After you've been tracked on radar, 639 times, you can tell when the other guy has a lock on, and you use your sophisticated technology to block the lock so he can't fire a missile at you. But they're doing their thing, and after all, if you want to meet somebody for lunch, maybe you got to have lights on to ID each other.
Well, it has occurred to me that they might be just trying to acclimate us to the fact that they're there, get everybody knowledgeable to the fact that they're there, and therefore it wouldn't be so much as a culture shock when they finally decide to land on the White House lawn.
Well, why they don't land on the White House lawn is one of the questions I'm going to be answering Friday night in Las Vegas, but let me give you a couple of reasons why not. In the first place, it's forbidden to fly over the White House so that there are airplanes ready to go up and attack you and, stay the heck away from
Well, we're not that trustworthy as a rule, so I guess probably
that's
figured
one
that
thing.
out a long time ago.
The second thing is, I hate to tell you this on the night of an election over there, but the President of the United States is not the President of the world. He doesn't speak for 6 billion Earthlings. He has trouble speaking for 300 million Americans,
Yeah.
So, he doesn't...
He thinks he does.
A billion people. China's got 1.3 billion, and we got a mere 300 million. So you say, well, elect him. Well, I don't think he'd win that race.
I can't blame them for not coming out and doing it because it would be...
Shoot first, ask questions later. That's the Earthling way.
And there's plenty of places in this world where that still goes on.
Oh, yes. Yes. Texas is one, I think. I shouldn't say that.
The other question I had was a lot of the reports you get nowadays, it seem like about 20 or 25% of them are... I was out taking a picture, and I didn't see it until I went in and put it on my video screen, and there you have something that looks like some sort of a UFO of some type. Now,
yeah, that is the problem.
Is that Photoshop, or is it the digital cameras can pick up things that
there are a lot of
pick up or something of that nature?
Digital cameras aren't perfect, and it is a problem when people don't see anything there, because often what shows up on the film isn't anything that's there. It's a light effect, a reflection off something. It is a problem, and that's why the pictures I will use in my Arizona lectures, for example, are all ones taken before they could have been done by computer. They're all daytime pictures. Well, there's a definite object there in the sky, and they've all been looked at by professional analysts, people like Dr. Bruce Maccabee, who's an optical physicist, who's looked at hundreds of so-called UFO pictures. So That's what I was saying before. Somebody shows me this light in the sky for 10 minutes where you can't see anything else. That's of no use in trying to see.
Yeah, a light in the sky is not much use,
especially at night
with a regular camera.
Yeah, I ran into a problem once when somebody was using a Polaroid. People still have Polaroids? I think they do. Camera, and they were shooting. They saw a light in the sky at night, and they took a picture with their Polaroid camera. And when they showed me the picture, wow, look at this! How this light is moving all around rapidly and so forth. Well, I said, well, do you know what the speed of the shutter is under those conditions? Well, no, I just aimed it and shot. Well, I checked with Polaroid, and it turns out that, especially that particular model, artists use it. What happens at night is the shutter stays open for maybe 15 seconds while you got a handheld camera, and you move your hands as much as you don't want to, but you do. And artists use it with a light source, and they move the camera to create picturesque patterns. So what's on the film is not what the person is seeing in the sky. It's a result of the motion of the camera.
I just read a report that somebody turned in on MUFON just today, I think it was, that they were in an aircraft and they take a picture of a light and they knew to hold their camera. They held the lens open, but they knew they couldn't hold it steady. But they pointed out the fact that they had this all zigzag line out there, which is what they're going to get. But it also, the zigzag line showed the varying intensity of the light that he was describing.
Well, there are a lot of cases. I have the world's largest gray basket. That's the term I use when I don't have enough data to make a choice, yay or nay. And everybody wants a yes or a no answer, And I say, no, it's in my gray basket. I don't have enough data to decide. Let's go to the good stuff. When you're in any other field, if you're looking for a drug to cure, athlete's fever or something, if a drug only works on 10% of the people, you say, let's see if we can do something better than that. 50% would be useful, 80% would be great. You're never going to get 100%. So we want to work at the high end, not spend our time on the low benefit, high uncertainty cases. And people get all excited, partly because they think they're the only ones who have seen one. And it's amazing. I've actually had it happen twice where I had somebody describe their sighting after my lecture, and when they zeroed in on it, somebody else in the audience had seen the same thing from a different location. And neither party knew that anybody else had seen it. Once in California, in Southern California, near Los Angeles, I got a call on a Sunday night about a red light in the sky at like 9 o'clock or so. Didn't think much about it, looked at a map, and what am I going to do with that? It wasn't Mars, but the next night I get a call from somebody else. They had both gotten my number from the Griffith Observatory. And looking at the map, it was clear these two people were both watching the same red light. So I called a local paper, had them run an article. My name is Stanton Friedman. I'm a nuclear physicist looking for people who might have seen something strange Sunday night at about 9 o'clock. It didn't give a lot of details. Here's a number you can reach me at. Here's my address. Witness names won't be used without permission. I'd like to hear from you. I got 30 responses. And almost all those people had tried to report it to somebody, a radio station, the cops, and most of them were with somebody else. And they just got laughed out of town. What have you been drinking, lady, was, the standard kind of thing. And fortunately, one of the people had binoculars, and it was a plastic bag with a candle in it, and it landed on the Wilshire Country Club lawn. And I checked with the fire department. The fire captain said, we're not going to go public with that. Every kid in the area is going to try to duplicate that. And we got fire hazards here, as you know, Mr. Friedman, at this time of year. So I agreed with them. I wasn't going to say
no, it'd be But I've heard that been done before.
Well, yeah, and the point of this little exercise was that it's amazing how accurate the observations were. They had trouble interpreting.
Well,
and that's one of the difficulties. An investigator asks something.
When you're looking at a light in the middle of the night, you do not know what size it is, how far away it is, or...
That's right.
There's not enough detail to come up with any... The only thing, I guess, the only thing that gets you is if you see a light and it's making really drastic, crazy movements. Now, that kind of puts out something really on the strange side.
There are things you can do. For example, what angle is it above the horizon? So you put your arm out straight in front and raise it up. Overhead is 90 degrees. You know, where? What's its apparent size? That is, what can you hold at arm's length, not next to your eye, but at arm's length, because we can always measure the distance from your nose to your fingers, that will just cover it. Now, people sometimes are surprised when I point out you can cover the moon with an aspirin tablet. Because when I ask them how big it was, I'll say, was it as big as the moon? Oh, no. Well, what would it take to cover it? Oh, probably a quarter. And then when you tell them that it only takes an aspirin tablet to cover the moon, oh. So some people ought to practice. Also, what direction?
I've never done that, and like you say, right now, if you looked outside over North Carolina here, the moon is real big, and I would think it would take much bigger than an aspirin, but I have never tried it.
Try it between your thumb and forefinger, unless you got very short arms.
No, I don't have short arms, so.
You try it, and you will be surprised. But it's a good way to get the apparent size. And I remember out in California, I had people tell me I was just over the next hill. And I say, well, you can't really tell that. What direction were you looking? What angle was it above the horizon? What time was it? And what direction did it seem to be moving, that is, north to south or whatever? And in 3 different cases, because I had observed this once myself, it turned out to be a rocket launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base down the coast. And I called them after talking to the witnesses very carefully, and in every case, their description was pretty darn good. I had one guy, he said we were sitting over on the beach, and here comes this thing across the sky, and it was like a string of popcorn. Part of the way across, there'd be things, light came off it and stuff. Well, I called the Vandenberg, and it turned out it had been a special kind of satellite that had solid boosters strapped on it, which were dropped off. It had several of them. And it was a very good description. The guy didn't know what he was seeing, understandably.
Yeah.
And I get people saying, oh, the bright light in the sky was nothing near as bright and so forth. Well, if you can pin down the direction, the time, and, was it as big as the moon? No, and stuff. And often it turns out, say, to be Venus. Now, they don't know it's Venus, and they're not lying to me.
I had a similar experience. Trent, my son, and I went out one night walking, and we saw these stars that were kind of, had a big twinkle to them, so we proceeded to go get the binoculars and look at them. And you could honestly look at them and see all the multicolored lights going around this, and I said, boy, that does look like, and these stars did it, and most of the other stars didn't. And I said, well, that sure looks weird. And I came back I went back 2 or 3 times, and I got to noticing they were in the same position, they did the same thing, and I finally decided, well, it's just the optics of the binoculars that are making this twinkle, this multicolored light going around.
And the atmosphere too, if you're near the horizon especially.
And firsthand, offhand, it looked really weird.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Ralph, I hate to interrupt you, but we're going to have to take another break.
Okay.
But does that get all your questions pretty much?
Well, this is kind of what I'd call a common sense statement about Roswell. Okay, everybody says, the government says it was a balloon that crashed. Well, to me, it's incredible that you got anybody that's over 10 years old that goes out in the desert and finds a balloon. They can't tell it's a balloon, because one thing a balloon is going to have, no matter what you got slung underneath it, is a whole bunch of fabric, flexible fabric, and it's probably going to be all over the place. and I just don't see how anybody could.
They can't, but the New York Times bought it. What the heck?
I don't know. It just seems to me like a lack of common sense that anybody could. You could probably take most 10-year-olds out there and they look at this.
That's right.
It's probably a balloon.
You're right.
And we're back on World of the Unexplained with Stanton Friedman, and Trent has finally returned.
Oh my gosh, I'm here.
All right. That number again, guys, is 877-722-7382. 877-SCARE-U2 or locally 336-996-1596. Give us a call here and you can speak live with Stanton Friedman tonight. Well, welcome back, Mr. Friedman.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Can I ask him a question real quick?
Yeah. Our producer wants to ask you a question. Hang tight.
You were talking earlier about why haven't they landed on the White House lawn? Wasn't there a period in '58, maybe under Eisenhower, where they were appearing massively over the White House for about a week?
1952, in the summer of '52, when Harry Truman was president, was a huge flurry of sightings over Washington. And as a matter of fact, there's a new book will be coming out in 2007 called Shoot Them Down. The government actually gave orders to interceptor pilots that shoot them down if they don't land when instructed to do so. And you can think of all kinds of cartoons to go with that. But the instructions were given, and as a matter of fact, a general made a public statement that we've scrambled jets after them hundreds of times and have been unsuccessful. Well, there's a flip side to that coin. I have heard of 7 different instances where more planes went up after the UFO than came back down. And that's a little scary. And as a matter of fact, I'm working on a story I got from a classmate of a guy who was a pilot in the Air Force in the early 50s in Europe, who came back, and his buddy asked him about the UFOs, and all he would say was, we lost 20 planes to them while I was over there.
Wow.
And if you look at the New York Times from 1950 to 55, you'll find over 200 military plane crashes, including use of the word disintegrated and disappeared. And also, there were 3 pilots who had over 100 missions in Korea, where the MiGs were after them, after all, who came back, no MiGs over here, and crashed. And one wonders what the real story is. We try to get government records on some of these, and they're just unavailable. So there's a larger picture here of what goes on. But yes, Washington did have its share of sightings. One of the biggest post-war press conference occurred on July 29th, I think it was, of '52, when General Samford, they try to explain them away as temperature inversions, but many people, including the radar observers at the various airports around Washington, all said it wasn't temperature inversions. So, yeah, we gave them a taste of American hospitality, trying to shoot them
by attacking them. Yeah. Welcome to Earth.
Anyway, here's the welcoming party.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So now I've got a question for you, Stan.
Crazy question.
And that's, you hear of one of our guests, one of our past guests has brought this to light. It seems fairly reasonable. Well, as reasonable as anything else out there, in my opinion. And that is, you've heard the theory, we talked a little bit about it on the break, of these UFOs being, these aliens and UFO encounters being demonic in nature, and maybe some people have the idea that they are actually demons that are putting up this great diversion. What do you think about that?
Well, I know that people have suggested that. As a matter of fact, Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson, who's from your hometown background.
Praise the Lord for North Carolina. Thank you.
Have both claimed that we are the only intelligent life in the universe, which is a pretty sad comment about the God they talk about so much. If this is the best she can do, my goodness.
That's he, Stanton. Go ahead.
Am I saying bad things in your territory?
Oh, yeah.
I think
you don't know me, Stanton. No, go ahead.
I think the angry mob
is coming. My point is that I don't think much of that notion. We have so many good reports from abduction cases, from these physical trace cases, of very sophisticated metallic objects, clearly under intelligent control. When you can zip around a high-performance fighter or bomber, or I remember the crew of a B-36 was talking about, here was a saucer. This B-36 is a huge airplane, 10 engines, and you won't see them flying anymore, but they were big at one point, carry a huge payload, and that means lots of H-bombs, basically. And when a saucer parks itself between the wing and the tail alongside the body of the aircraft, that's not demons. It scared the bejeebers out of some of the people on board. As a matter of fact, I had a story after one of my lectures. He didn't say it publicly, but he came over to me afterward. A pilot who'd been in Vietnam, and he said, we had a saucer fly around our helicopter twice, and we all expected we'd be dead. It was a new Russian vehicle of some kind. And he said, so of course I reported it, because you're supposed to report new enemy equipment. And, I mean, the thing flew around twice, then it took off. And the next day, the commander of the group comes over and says, Lieutenant Jones, you didn't see anything strange yesterday, did you? Yes, sir, I reported it. You didn't hear me, Lieutenant Jones. You didn't see anything strange yesterday, did you? Well, you like flying, Lieutenant Jones. Yes, sir. You didn't see anything strange yesterday, did you? No, sir.
Man.
Yeah.
I've heard variations on that. Again, completely independently. I don't tell these stories at my lectures. And so I begin to believe that there's a standard procedure here. Also talking to airline pilots about not reporting sightings if they have them, because airline business won't be helped by your guys talking about seeing UFOs. Well, you know what's peculiar is the polls show that more people believe in UFOs than don't. But people think other people don't believe in UFOs, and so they react accordingly. You know, silly season is here again, ha ha. See any green men lately? You know, that sort of thing. And so we have a problem, despite the dozen or so PhD theses that have been done, and the lots of good papers. The Mutual UFO Network has an annual symposium at which the papers that are presented, almost all by professional people, are included in the symposium proceedings. 37 years, I think, we're coming up on. And so there's loads of good professional level data. And I just read a book about the planets by Dr. David Grinspoon. A lot of good stuff in the book, but he sure misses the boat on UFOs. It's one of those crazy things that that's why I talk about S.E.T.I cultists. There's life all over the place out there, and some of it's more advanced than we are, and if we just listen long enough, we'll pick up their signals, which assumes that our technology is at about the same level as theirs. And one of Friedman's laws, I make them up as I go along, but one of them is that technological progress comes from doing things differently in an unpredictable way. The future is not an extrapolation of the past. In other words, we don't make better smoke signals today for long-distance communication than they did 100 years ago. Lasers aren't just better light bulbs, entirely different physics. I worked on fusion rockets for deep space travel back in the early 60s. And if you use the right stuff in the right way and get particles out the back end that have 10 million times as much energy per particle as you can get in a dumb old chemical rocket. So to expect that anybody in the neighborhood is stuck at the same level of technology as we have, which we've only had for, say, 150 years. I mean, I got a shock. I was talking to two classes at a college in Detroit 2 years ago. And I mentioned that, you know, look how things have changed in just 50 years. Look at the computers and, you know, all the rest of it.
So had you worked on ion propulsion then? Is that what you were hinting at?
No, fusion, well, loosely speaking, it's ion propulsion. I worked on nuclear power plants to provide the power, but nuclear fusion, if you use the right reactions, deuterium and helium-3 for those so interested. Fusion is what goes on in the stars. It's the major source of energy in all our lives. It's also what goes on in H-bombs, but we don't want to talk about that. But if you use the right reactions, you can literally kick particles out the back end that have 10 million times as much energy per particle as you can get in a dumb old chemical rocket. Not 10 million times. And so I was in this class in Detroit, and I mentioned, when I started work in industry, I was using a slide rule. And I looked around the class, and it suddenly struck me.
Slide rule. Wow.
That's old school.
That's real old school.
I asked, anybody here know what a slide rule is? Nobody did.
I know what's what. Yeah, I've seen them.
And that's only 50 years, for goodness sake. Now, I should point out, to give a sense of perspective about that, just 39 light years away, which is really just down the street. I mean, the galaxy's 100,000 light years across. The next big galaxy's over 2 million light years away. So just down the street, 39 light years, there's a pair of sun-like stars. Now, of the 1,000 stars within 54 light years, only 46 are like the sun, not too hot, not too cold, not too old, not too new, etc. Might be expected to have planets and life. Well, here's a pair, 39 light years away, that are only an eighth of a light year apart, which is better than 30 times closer than the sun is to the next star over. We're out in the boonies. These guys got next-door neighbors. And that means that from a planet around one looking over at the other, you can directly observe planets. You don't need to guess. Now, here's the tricky part. Those two stars just happen to be 1 billion years older than the sun. Wow. One would expect two things, that there'd be a much greater incentive for developing interstellar travel when you got a nearby neighbor, and we don't need to guess if there's anybody over there, and when you got 1 billion years to learn a little bit more than we learn. I mean, I hate to tell people we're not the most advanced beings around, but...
What? No, go ahead.
Well, that would have a real impact, I know, on some people.
Pat Robertson.
Pat Robertson, yeah, maybe.
I'm glad you said it, not me.
Chuck's our agnostic here, but, I'm not a big fan of Pat Robertson, just to get the record straight there. Just to let you know.
I mentioned him only because...
Well, my right-wing Christian agenda does not include Pat Robertson. Go right ahead, Stan. I'm sorry.
Well, I mentioned them only because I normally give 6 reasons for governments not wanting to tell us what's going on. First is you want to figure out how they work. They make wonderful weapons delivery and defense systems. You got wreckage from Roswell and other places. You set up your secret program. Now, a key rule here is you can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. They listen to the radio too, guys, No. Second reason is the other side of the same coin. What if your enemy, and everybody's got enemies, it seems, figures out how they work before you do? You don't want them to know, they know, weapon, counter-weapon, counter-weapon, etc. The third problem is if an announcement were to be made by highly trusted individuals around the world, and it's a little hard to find anybody, but I like the Queen and the Pope. How's that for an odd couple?
That would be good.
If they were to say, some UFOs are alien spacecraft, what would happen? Church attendance would go up, I think. Mental hospital admissions would go up. The stock market would go down. But based on more than 600 college lectures that I've given, I believe the younger generation would push for a new view of ourselves. Instead of as Americans, Canadians, Greeks, Peruvians, Chinese, whatever, as Earthlings.
No, you're a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, isn't that correct?
Yes, I certainly am.
Okay. Were you born in Canada or born in the U.S.?
Born in New Jersey.
Ah, Jersey boy, okay.
It isn't my fault. I had nothing to do with it.
Now, going back to the comment you were just making, Stanton, didn't the
government wants its citizens to owe their allegiance to the planet.
Oh, no, I know that. But going back to what you were saying about the Pope coming out and the Queen, didn't the Mexican government come out and say, hey, UFOs are real?
Well, the Mexican government was very careful in what they said, although some of the interpreters weren't so careful. They provided data to a civilian group down there of observations made on a plane that was there for illegal drug plane carrying interdiction. And there were some strange signals. They had an infrared, a FLIR, it's infrared device. And there were some signals, including some radar signals, that sure indicated something strange was going on.
Stan, I hate to interrupt you, but we've got another caller.
Okay.
Caller, you're on the air with Stanton Friedman.
Yeah, it's Chris from Maine.
Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Not too
Did
bad.
you say from Maine?
Yeah.
Oh, next door to me. I have a post office box, P.O. Box 958 in beautiful downtown Holton, Maine.
I'm a little south of you. I'm going to make a quick question, just because everybody's sleeping here. I don't want to wake anybody up. On an earlier show you guys had, you had Oliver Williams on, who was speaking about John Teeter, and John Teeter had mentioned that possibly UFOs might possibly be time travelers. I was just wondering if you could touch on that, and I'll hang up and listen to your answer.
Okay, thanks for the call, Chris. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that address in Maine is really Post Office Box 958, Holton, Maine 04730-0958.
So they can reach you there.
PayPal on my website. You can send me a check there. That's
awesome.
That's right.
And this will be up in our archive, so they can rewind this and get that. Go ahead and give it out one more time for those listening live.
Post Office Box 958, Holton. That's Houlton. It's right on the Canadian border. Maine, which is ME 04730-0958. The radio special is $35, including shipping and handling, but you can find it on the website, and you can use PayPal or send a check. We're liberal. I shouldn't use that word.
Not in the South. Not in the South. No. And mention you heard it on World of the Unexplained. Mention you heard about it there. We'd appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. Now, about time travel. There's been a lot of talk. The same people who love string theory with 11 dimensions and stuff love to warp space and time to pop from here to there without being in between. And I'll say neutral. Really, it's in my gray basket. But the kicker here is that we do know of one way in which we can have time travel in a peculiar sense. What Einstein said was, as you get close to the speed of light, time slows down for the things moving that fast. So if you got, your twins, and one guy is flying the spaceship, the other guy is staying home, the guy on the spaceship, it takes a year at 1g acceleration to get close to the speed of light. Now, at 99.99% of the speed of light, you can go 38 light years in 6 months pilot time.
Wow.
If you only go 99.9% of the speed of light, it takes 20 months pilot time. But the point is, you go out and come back, and you're a lot younger than your brother remaining at home. So that's a kind of time travel. You're traveling into the future. Everybody else is old, and you're not. And you've had a war or two or whatever is going to happen, and, So that's one kind of time travel. Now, if you picture a sheet of paper with a hungry spider in one corner and diagonally across a fly sitting on the paper, obviously the spider zips down the diagonal because the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and by the time he gets there, the fly has flown the coop. However, if you could get somebody to bend the paper, then you can reach out and grab that fly without being any place in between. So it won't take any time to get there, will it?
You're talking about wormholes.
Yeah, wormholes.
Well, wormholes, white holes, black holes. We got a whole menagerie out there. It's a crazy thing.
No, we've got another caller for you, Stan.
Okay.
Hi,
you're on the air.
Hi, it's Trevor from Toronto calling.
Oh, awesome. New caller. How you doing, Trevor?
Oh, pretty good.
How long you been listening to the show?
I've been listening probably about a month. I've been downloading a lot of your shows, and I emailed you actually about the Highgate Vampire stuff, which I thought was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, excellent stuff. We're gonna try to get him back on. I just sent him a mail the other day. So awesome. What's your question for Stanton Friedman?
Well, I was wondering. There's a lot of these guys who are a lot of promotion going on. Different people who claim to have evidence and things. I'm wondering if there's anything that he thinks that seems kind of credible. I know he talked about him having a gray box, but is there anything that sounds particularly credible to you as far as actual physical evidence that isn't in government hands?
Well, yeah, Ted Phillips in Missouri, with his 5,000 physical trace cases from 70 countries. I myself had analysis done of the dirt in a ring that was dried out down 14 inches. This was in Delphos, Kansas. And definite physical evidence, because the dirt in the ring wouldn't absorb moisture. The normal dirt from a few feet away did absorb moisture. And it also had a higher level of soluble minerals. It wouldn't grow anything. The regular soil would, and the reason was that I had lab testing done, and it was simply too salty, if to put it in simple terms. So there's a lot of that kind of evidence around. There's also the radar visual cases where you have pictures of the radar scope. You have the UFO abduction cases where you've got scoop marks and other marks on abductees.
I was wondering about the, you have these guys, the alien hunter guy, and you have Dr. Lear with his implants.
The implants are another story. Yes, I know Roger Lear, and he's a podiatrist, foot doctor in common language, and he has removed, I don't know what the last count is. The last I heard was 11, I think, different strange things in people's bodies, usually the extremities, of course, and where there sometimes is a story to go with it of how it might have gotten there. And, it sounds pretty far-fetched until you realize that, A, he's been assisted at the surgeries by other doctors, B, he had some very peculiar test results from Southwest Research Institute, raising more questions than answered, but peculiar stuff that was in one of these implants. And C, it appears, I looked it up once, and it found that you can buy little devices about the size of a small BB that you can actually implant in animals, cows, dogs, people, which are transponders.
Right.
You wave a wand at them.
These are like these are these like these RFID chips? Is that what you're talking about, Stan?
I think that's what they must be, because people use them for lost animals and stuff like that. But you wave a wand at them, and you get a signal back that tells you, who, what, where, why, etc. Just like airplanes, commercial airplanes, control towers and so forth. They're only looking for planes with transponders. That is a device that automatically tells them the serial number and, other stuff like that, the ID numbers of the airplane. And if you don't have one of those on, they don't even pick you up on radar. This is one of the problems with 9/11. Supposedly, the crew members, the guys who stole the airplanes, turned off the transponders. There's about 3,000 planes flying around, and how do you know which one is yours?
Well, apparently there were a number of near misses too during that when the hijackings took place because they weren't following any of the predetermined routes.
Well, what I'm saying is that having tiny transponding devices, if we can already do it, and they sell you a little tool for putting them subcutaneously under the skin, if we can already do that with 50 years of sophisticated technology, then alien could surely do a lot better than that. All I got to do is say my first computer had 20 megabytes of hard drive. My wife bought one recently for family pictures, 200 gigabytes.
Oh, wow.
But, that's just in a few years is what I'm saying. So where are we going to be? And look at the speeds.
And we're back to World of the Unexplained with the Stanton Friedman.
That's right. Stanton, how are you?
Oh, I'm great here in beautiful downtown Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada.
So how many
I don't get paid by the tourist bureau, but I like it here.
How many homes do you have then? How many places do you go? You've got obviously a post office box in Maine. I mean, how many places do you have around Canada and the U.S.?
I just have our home here, and it's 73 miles from Maine. And the reason I have a post office box in Maine is that postage to Canada now, it didn't used to be this way, is higher than it is to the States, and people don't know that. And they won't collect postage due here. They'll just send it back at the border. And when I do certain radio shows, I'll offer free information, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to my post office box. And How are you going to send something like that to Canada? You know, what kind of postage and all that stuff. So technical journals cost a lot less if they're sent that originate in the United States if they're sent to the United States. Putting that across the border raises the postage significantly.
Oh, yeah. Anyone that does a lot of eBaying will definitely appreciate that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's true, and it's, like I say, some people don't realize it. But and people say, I tell them, look, if you're off by a nickel, they'll send it back. Well, what's the matter? You're too cheap to pay postage too? No, I'm not too cheap to pay postage too. It never gets here.
Yeah. So let's hear that radio special again, there, Stanton.
Yeah, it's a simple-minded sort of thing. 2 books: Crash at Corona, the definitive study of the Roswell Incident, and Top Secret / MAJIC, MAJIC, which is all about the operation, the very important Operation Majestic 12 documents. It's the 2nd edition, came out last year with the whole 5,000-word afterword that deals with the objections raised by the noisy negativists. And the 3rd item is a CD-ROM, which you can ask me 50 questions. It's got all kinds of goodies on it. And it's called UFOs, The Real Story. And you get the whole package, all 3 items, both books and the CD-ROM, a $45 value for only $35, including priority mail.
And if you call right now, no, I'm kidding.
No, use PayPal on my website, www.stantonfriedman.com, or send a check or money order. There's an order blank on the website. There's a number of articles there. It's not just government UFO lies and my take on Bob Lazar and my take on Colonel Corso and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean,
now, do you have anything else in the works coming out soon? I mean, another book that you're working on currently?
Well, actually, yeah, funny you should ask that. A couple of things. Frank Fascino Jr. And I've been working on the Flatwoods Monster story.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Frank's spent 15 years on it, and he's got one book out, The Braxton County Monster, cover-up of the Flatwoods Monster revealed, but the new one will be Shoot Them Down, and I've written the foreword and the epilogue and all this stuff, in which Frank goes over the stuff that I mentioned earlier about attempts to shoot down UFOs, and that should be out in the first part of the year. There's a second book by Kathy Marden. She has been a social worker and a teacher. She's active in MUFON. She's Betty Hill's niece, and she has the rights and has all the tapes and is the executor of Betty's estate. And I've worked with her on a book. She did most of the work, but I'm listed as a co-author, called Captured, an Insider's Look at the Betty and Barney Hill Case. And it was quite fascinating to do it because Kathy really dug into the tapes and her talks with her aunt and all that stuff. And that should be out. And then Jesse Marcel Jr.
We're having him on, actually.
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
His new book, I've got a friend of mine, Randy Harrigan. I don't know if you know him from the UFO.
I know Randy.
Yeah, Randy introduced me to Jesse, and me and Randy have been talking about it for a while, and he told me, unfortunately, that he has pre-sold 500 of his books, and now they've moved. Jesse apparently has decided to move the publication or the release date out until I think in June.
Wow.
So I've got an email out to him now to see if he wants to move his appearance, which I think he's supposed to come on next month with us to another, sometime closer to the book's release. But
there's a good witness. He's only a colonel in the Army. He's a flight surgeon, a medical doctor, a helicopter pilot, spent a year in Iraq, coming back a year ago. At age 67, he went over.
Wow.
And, it really irked me when the Peter Jennings special on February 24th last year, they interviewed Jesse. They didn't mention any of those things. Wouldn't you think they go to credibility?
Of course. Yeah.
I mean, a colonel? Nobody can say he's anti-government. He's got 43 years connection with the military between reserve. He fought in Vietnam.
And no one can say he's not a patriot.
That's true.
That's right. And so, and a medical doctor. I mean, these are the kind of witnesses you want.
Credible. Very credible.
Yes. And so I've written the foreword for his book.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I didn't know that.
And I've waited for... I think I'm the only UFO investigator who's been in both Jesse's home and his father's home.
Wow.
That shows you how old I am.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Yeah.
But, wow, so did you know his father personally then, I assume?
Yeah, I was the first one to talk to him, and then I was at his home, sure.
Wow. That's amazing.
One of the
Very
things
cool.
on my website is Recollections of Roswell, which is a testimony on video of 27 different witnesses, 105 minutes, I think, and certainly one of them is Jesse's father. And I was there when it was filmed.
Now the story I've heard actually is that the debris he collected at the crash site, he brought in to his superiors. He was asked to leave the room, and when he came back, it was a bunch of weather balloon debris. Have you heard that same?
Well, that's not quite right. He brought it back. This is from 80 miles out of Roswell. He came home late in the evening, stopped at home, showed Jesse Jr. some of the material, brought some of it in. You see, at this point, it wasn't classified, after all, because they went out there thinking it was probably an airplane crash or something. They didn't know what happened. He takes it into the base the next morning. His boss, Colonel Blanchard, tells him to take it over to Colonel Blanchard's boss, General Ramey, in Fort Worth, Texas, on their way to Wright-Patterson, Wright Field at that time. And Jesse, of course, follows orders. He was a major and the intelligence officer for the only atomic bombing group in the whole world, the 509th there at Roswell. Now, before he even got to Fort Worth, Texas, headquarters of the 509th, headquarters of the 8th Air Force, which the 509th was part of, General Ramey, his colonel, Thomas Jefferson Dubose, took the call from Ramey's boss telling him to cover the story up. The press release had already gone out. Cover the story up, get the media off our back. I don't care how you do it. Send some of that wreckage up here today with one of your Colonel Couriers. And I don't want you ever to talk about it again, not even with your buddy Roger Ramey. That's an order. Do I need to put it in writing? No, sir.
Wow.
When a two-star general tells a colonel what to do, they knew each other. He does it. You know, they're both West Pointers, as was Ramey, as was Blanchard. So when Jesse shows up, General Ramey tells him, this is in Fort Worth, Texas, what is now sort of Carswell Air Force Base. It was Fort Worth Airfield at that time. He tells him, you don't say anything, I'll take care of it. And that's where the wreckage got carted off that away, and this phony radar reflector balloon combination got brought in, and Jesse couldn't say anything. And the pictures were taken. I was the first to get copies of those pictures way back in the 70s. It seems so long ago.
I'm not going to mention that I was born in the 70s. Oh, I did mention it. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right, Sonny.
But
sorry, couldn't resist.
Yeah. Not a problem. But you are probably the one of the preeminent biggest names in any kind of UFO research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I've been around so long. I'm a big mouth. I'm a true Leo. I enjoy being on the stage. That's why I was so disappointed in Peter Jennings. We were both born on July 29th, and we're both Canadian-Americans or American-Canadians. I'd forgotten that Benito Mussolini was also born on July 29th.
Hey, what a birthday to share, you know?
Yeah. And probably lots of other people. 1/3 of 1% of the population was born on that day.
Well, Stanton, we appreciate you coming on the show. I want to give you the last couple minutes. If you've got any final words, please shoot.
Okay. I think what we need to understand here is we're dealing with probably the biggest story of the millennium. I won't say 2 millennia because I don't want to get into that discussion. I mean, don't forget, Jesus was one of our guys who made good, you might say. Anyway, the planet's being visited. We're not the big shots we'd like to think we are in the local neighborhood. I think the real reason they're coming here, and I didn't get to it before, is to quarantine us. I don't think any Galactic Federation membership committee would accept our application because we're clearly a primitive society whose major activity is tribal warfare. And the biggest thing about flying saucers is to try to see ourselves as they must see us. We killed 50 million of our own kind in World War II. We destroyed 1,700 cities, we Earthlings. So, we're not people to be trusted as a society. We don't even have a leader to be taken to. Nobody who speaks for the planet. We use our resources primarily for killing, it seems. That may sound strong, but you realize that our military budget this year will be $500 billion. 30,000 children die every single day of preventable disease and starvation. So what we're talking about here is to try to see ourselves and maybe improve to the point where we do qualify for admission. I mean, I can joke about all the different reasons for coming here. Honeymoon capital this corner of the galaxy, and guest food lodging next exit, and maybe this was a penal colony. They dropped all their bad boys and girls here, and that's why we're so nasty to each other. Don't forget that Georgia and Australia were first settled by convicts,
Yeah.
But to be very serious about it, we're probably the only civilization at this point in time in our local neighborhood that's going through this transition from being stuck on our own planet to being able to make a mess someplace else. Of course they would be concerned about us. I'm concerned about us. I've got a grandson. Will we get through the next 20 years? So there's an important way of reappraising our approach to where we fit. We like to think we're the cream of creation, the crown of creation, most advanced in the neighborhood. I think we're more like the gorillas in the nature preserve in Africa who have no idea what's going on outside their group. And that's a humbling thought. Yeah, I'm interested in technology. I'm excited about nuclear rockets and stuff like that. But what we're really talking about here is how do people act toward people and toward other intelligent beings? And that's a concern to me. I think we need to get it straight. It shouldn't be shoot first, ask questions later. It should be what can we learn from them? They've been forbearing. Obviously, they could destroy us if they wanted to. So maybe we need to learn how to do that. And so I'm excited still about ufology. I'm interested. I not only like lecturing and writing, but talking to people. And I've only had 11 hecklers in over 700 lectures. I must be doing something right.
Oh, definitely.
So I enjoy what I'm doing. I hope anybody who's listening who knows about airplanes that went up and didn't come back, who knows somebody whose grandfather was at Roswell and still has a piece of the wreckage, write me at Post Office Box 958, Holton, Maine, ME 04730-0958. The address is on my website, www.stantonfriedman.com.
All right.
Wow.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to our show tonight, Stanton. We appreciate it.
It's been a
My pleasure.
And we will talk with you later. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Stanton Friedman.
I only got an hour of that?
Hey, man, you showed up late.
Well, I'm sorry.
At least you showed up this time, right?
Yeah. That was a really cool interview, though. Stanton always impresses me whenever I hear him,
Oh, definitely. I want to mention
I'd like to actually see one of his lectures one day. But
oh, yeah. Just fly on out, man.
Yeah. Piles of money.
I want to mention, we'll take some of that pile of money cash we've got in the back there and fly you out there and let you do a field report.
That would be fun. That would be.
I did want to mention the Dark 30 tour that's being done by Joshua P. Warren and Jim Mars and Nick Redfern, and that's going to be kicking off in Kansas City, Missouri. Next month. I think it's around this time next month, around December 13th, that area. I'm not sure exactly what the website is. It might be dark30.com. But if it's not, you can always go and visit joshuapwarren.com and you can get the information there, or jimmars.com and get the information there. I think Nick Redfern's probably got a nickredfern.com. Who knows? But it's the Dark 30. Just Google Dark 30, DARK 30, and you should be able to find out about that. If you're in that area, then go check it out. December 9th, that's the date. December 9th, Dark 30 tour, first one.
Yeah.
But my book is coming along now. And
is it?
Oh, yes. And it should be ready for, I've been talking to a few publishers, and it should be ready for publication probably within the next 6 months. So then I'll be a guest on our show. No, I'm kidding. But
I'll interview you.
That's right.
So Scott, tell me about. Oh,
you and Chuck can interview me.
All right, Mr. Ego.
Oh, me.
Let's pop that balloon above your shoulders there.
Who's on next week, guys? Anybody know?
I don't have a computer.
That's right.
Let me log on to my invisible computer.
The reason
and get onto my invisible chat room.
The reason that you don't have a computer is because it is in the shop right now.
Oh really? I thought you were gonna shoot it.
No, I had to get it. I had to take it in to get it fixed. So that's
shot it.
That's the reason you don't have a laptop right now. So yeah, because I'm sorry.
That's all right. I was just messing with you.
That's okay. You missed the Halloween special, man.
Look, okay, I was a little busy.
Yeah, I know. You missed the Halloween special.
There was an election in Kyrgyzstan I had to go to.
Yeah. Speaking of elections.
No, he's in Kazakhstan, but I mean, yeah, that's true. It's all Central Asia,
Speaking of elections, it's election time. I have to send my word of approval for Vernon Robinson.
Oh.
He's going to be.
Oh my! You voted for him.
I can't vote for him. He's outside of my district.
But he's in mine.
Oh, he's in yours. Are you voting for Vernon Robinson?
Twice.
I generally don't disclose who I vote for.
Oh, come on.
It's mighty white of me.
I voted for the.
Oh my God! I can't believe you said. Did you hear what he said? That's such a Republican comment. Anyway, so
let's wave a little flag here. I voted for the Communist Party.
Our music just ended.
Oh. That's right. Well,
you voted for the Communist Party?
No, of course not. I was just kidding.
I don't even think we have a Communist Party.
Well, maybe somewhere in Detroit.
All right, November 13th. That's next week.
York,
We've got Michael B. Haupt. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Haupt. H-A-U-P-T. What do you think? Haupt.
Yeah.
Michael B. Haupt. World War III. Are we now involved in World War III?
Are we?
Michael's going to discuss the current situation in the world, tell us why he believes we're involved in what now is the beginning of World War III. So that should be interesting. The following week, we welcome back author Thomas Horn. Is going to come back to discuss some of the crazy UFO stuff we talked about earlier.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, November 27th, we have Brent Miller. Have you seen the DVD yet? Did you watch it? I gave it to you the other night.
I watched one half of it.
Watch one half of it? Okay.
Well,
It looks like there was a lot of guerrilla filmmaking on that thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, because he's like whispering in the library. I'm like, they didn't have a permit, did they?
No.
And I know these things because I've been involved in some guerrilla projects as well. And it just seems a little guerrilla to me.
Well, Guerrilla's it's a good band.
After that, it's like, I don't know. The only thing I can get out of the Horizon projects is like a new spin on the Planet X thing.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty much where I was going with it too.
Yeah, but it does have what's his name, Michael Zarian, as part of that project. So that's cool.
Former guest, Michael Zarian.
December 4th, Randy Harrigan. I'm going to get some stuff up about him pretty soon. I've really got to work on this upcoming guest page because I've booked out a lot of 07 now so far too. So we've got some great guests coming up. Jesse Marcel Jr., Roswell, It Really Happened. That's December 18th, but that may move.
Yeah, we might move it.
That's right. Merry Christmas, December 25th. No show. We may do a redo, but I don't know. But we do have a New Year's Eve guest, and it's a guy named Rich Anders, and he's going to come on and talk about some more UFO stuff. So we've we're just UFOing it all crazy out here.
Interview while we're loaded.
That's right. That's great.
So all right. Question about something.
So anyway, we got to sign off now, guys. Thanks for tuning in, all 8 million of you. Thank you. And anyway.
Thank you, Detroit.
Email us, worldtheunexplained@gmail.com. This is Jay Scott. You're on the JD DJ on the Planet Paranormal Network.
All right. I get to say my tagline.
That's right.
It's been a long time. This is Trent Lackey. We're coming to you from Kernersville, North Carolina, a small town where we talk about big things.
We out!